On the first day of October 2025, in the sprawling river city of Manaus, deep in the heart of Amazonas state, Brazil, something extraordinary unfolded on the dark waters of the Rio Negro. Officers from the Environmental Battalion of the Amazonas Military Police received an urgent report. A jaguar had been struggling to stay afloat in the river for several hours, and its strength was rapidly failing. When the patrol boat reached the area near Ponta Negra Beach, the crew found the animal still fighting, barely. He was male, approximately 5 years old, and his condition was alarming. His coat was drenched and matted against his frame, his movements had slowed to almost nothing, and his lean, emaciated body suggested he had not eaten properly in some time. Witnesses who had watched from the shore said the jaguar appeared deeply disoriented, unable to orient himself toward land, let alone reach it under his own power. The officers assessed the situation quickly and came to an unambiguous conclusion. Without intervention in the next few minutes, the animal would drown. What made this moment particularly remarkable, and what separated it from almost every other recorded encounter between wild jaguars and humans, was the animal's behavior. Rather than retreating or thrashing in fear as the boat drew near, the jaguar turned toward it. He swam in the direction of the vessel. Whether driven by pure exhaustion, some dim instinct for survival, or a last desperate calculation that the humans approaching him represented his only chance, he moved toward them. It is one of the very few documented cases of a wild jaguar actively seeking proximity to people in order to be saved. The officers aboard had no specialized wildlife rescue equipment. There were no nets designed for large predators, no harnesses, no sedatives. They worked with what the boat carried, improvised a makeshift floating platform from available materials, and carefully lowered it into the water beside the jaguar. The animal, though barely able to move, reached out with both front paws and gripped the device. He held on. Moving with great care and deliberate slowness so as not to startle him, the officers towed him through the current toward the riverbank. When they reached the shore, a team of veterinarians from the Federal University of Amazonas and the State Department of Animal Welfare was waiting. The initial examination confirmed that the jaguar's crisis extended far beyond his ordeal in the river. X-rays revealed a devastating picture. More than 30 lead bullet fragments were lodged throughout the animal's head, neck, and torso. His teeth showed extensive fracturing, consistent with a direct physical attack of considerable violence. These were not the wounds of an animal that had merely wandered into danger. These were the marks of targeted brutality. Someone had shot this jaguar repeatedly and left him to die. Surgeons operated immediately, extracting every fragment that could be safely removed without causing further harm, and treating the infected tissue that had developed around the wounds. Dozens of fragments, however, were positioned too close to vital structures to be touched. They were left in place. After surgery, the jaguar was transferred to the Manaus Zoological Garden to begin a closely supervised rehabilitation under continuous veterinary care. Authorities in Amazonas state opened a criminal investigation. Under Brazilian law, jaguars are a fully protected species, and hunting them carries serious legal consequences. At the time this account was recorded, no suspect had been identified. In the days that followed the operation, the jaguar lay still in his isolation enclosure at the zoo, motionless beneath the clinical lights, his breathing shallow and monitored around the clock. The animal that had once moved through the Amazon as its apex predator, silent, powerful, sovereign over thousands of square kilometers of rainforest, now lay dependent on the vigilance of human doctors for every breath he drew. The veterinary team watched him daily with acute concern, knowing that with so much foreign material still inside his body, a single pocket of infection could trigger rapid and catastrophic decline. Yet the physical injuries, serious as they were not what worried the specialists most. Their deeper anxiety was behavioral. A jaguar is not merely a large cat that can be healed and released. It is a precision instrument shaped by millions of years of evolution. A hunter whose survival in the wild depends on reflexes, spatial awareness, and predatory instinct that must remain intact. Trauma of this magnitude, both physical and neurological, carries the real risk of permanently disrupting those capacities. A jaguar that survives its wounds but loses the ability to hunt effectively cannot be returned to the forest. It would not last. Brazil shelters nearly half of all jaguars remaining on Earth, yet the species continues to lose ground to illegal hunting, habitat destruction, and human encroachment. The animal in the water off Ponta Negra Beach was not a symbol or a statistic. He was a living individual who had been shot more than 30 times and still found the will to swim toward help. His story is a reminder that rescuing a wild animal from the river is only the first moment of a far longer obligation, not just to one creature struggling to survive, but to an entire species that cannot afford to lose another.